When people talk about artificial intelligence, I usually find the most common topics that come up are pathfinding, object avoidance, the way your character perceives the environment, but in actual reality those things are not artificial intelligence at all. Artificial intelligence is really about making decisions. Now, pathfinding is just a tool that the artificial intelligence works on, if you understand what I mean. So, for example, the artificial intelligence will decide where to go, and then the pathfinding will be used as a tool to show how to get there. It's not artificial intelligence itself, and same with dynamic object avoidance. And so, in the light of this, I always try and keep my AI as separate as possible from my tools that the AI uses. And one thing that I first needed to create before I got my NPCs going is a method for them to perceive their environment, and that in itself is a tool. Now, what I've done is I've first decided I want to create a sightbox class. Now, you can often in games get away with things like line of sight or proximity for like NPCs perceiving enemies around them. However, my game features a lot of stealth mechanics, and I want these stealth mechanics to be really robust. Like, he either sees you or he doesn't. None of this wishy-washy, oh, he might have seen me, it didn't feel like he saw me, but he did anyway. I want it to be quite exact, and so I've made this sightbox class based on my trigger classes. It might be a bit overkill to have a full trigger and a full collision to go with these sightboxes for the vision of an NPC. However, I feel that it's a big enough part of the game to warrant it. So here you can see my sightbox. It's a rectangular cone that goes from here to here, and you can see it's not attached to an NPC at all, but you can sort of see that would be where the focal point is, and it's looking this way. Now, the idea is that I simply place this in the editor, and instead of fixing these sightboxes to NPCs, I want to simply place them within the proximity of the NPC in the editor, link them up with the IDs the same way I have done with the triggers, linking the triggers to the gates, and then that NPC will manage the moving around, and the sightbox itself can manage itself. So in this video I'm just demonstrating the sightbox doing its part, being a tool for the AI rather than being integrated in the AI. Now, if you have a look here, the sightbox is green. That means that this guy hasn't seen anyone. Let's see what happens when I go into it. You'll see now that the sightbox is turned yellow. And I'll just go a little bit further, and you'll see now it's turned red. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'll explain in a bit, but there's one more thing. Now, if I go back to where it was yellow before, it's still red. What's going on here? Well, as I said, I wanted my stealth system to be rather robust, and therefore sort of realistic as possible without going over the edge. So this green represents that he cannot see anything. This yellow represents the NPC can see something, but he doesn't know what it is. He's not going to suddenly start attacking this thing. He's going to go and have a look at it first and see what it is. And the red means, dang, he knows I'm a bad guy and he's going to shoot me. Now, the reason it doesn't go yellow even when you go back to where it was yellow is because he already knows what you are. So even if you go further away, he's still going to know what you are. If you're within his sight, you have to actually, once you go red, you don't go back until you get out. So that's basically the sightbox managing itself, and the NPC will have a pointer to this sightbox, and through its states of behavior, it will sort of query the sightbox and say, what's the current state? Do you see something? Is there something close? Is there something far? Should I attack? and it will, based on whatever that enumeration is that the trigger gives back, it'll do its thing. Now, this trigger also checks the line of sight, because obviously a trigger can go through a wall, so the sight box also checks the line of sight to make sure you actually can see it if it's targeted. Another thing the trigger does is it stores all the targets, so any target like this guy that is within the trigger, it will store a pointer to that object class, and the NPC can get that pointer and therefore find the position and therefore aim and shoot at me or whatever, or run to me or attack me. You get the idea. Now I'll just show you this in the editor, how it's set up. Alright, so we're in the Esenthel editor now, and you can see, just like the triggers I've had before, the sight box is also its own object, and it updates its own stuff. It has its own parameters. Now, the cool thing about this is that the sight box for specific NPCs is not fixed. I can scale it up, scale it down, you know, scale it sideways. Let's have a look. You can make it a lot wider, shorter, longer, and I can change its parameters. So there's a major advantage of doing this. It just makes everything more dynamic. So I can change its parameters, so its range, range alert. So this is the range that it has to be from the focal point to be considered a red alert. So like, I see that person. And of course I've got the IDs. Now the sight box object actually inherits from the trigger class. It's actually one and the same thing except extended, and therefore it works with the triggerverse that I've explained in previous blogs, and so therefore the IDs have to be unique from the triggers. And I thought, well, this is going to be a bit tricky, so I decided to start the IDs from like 200. I might even start from 1,000. I doubt I'm going to have 1,000 triggers, but if I start my sight boxes from 1,000, my triggers from 1, it should be okay. And yeah, so that really makes it highly dynamic. And what will happen is I'll place an NPC. I've got one ready to go. He's not programmed yet though. He's just a model. Where is he? So it's sort of like a turret made up of a bunch of pieces. It's a bit of a crazy turret. You saw it in my last blog. And I'm going to put him here, and what will happen is he will reference, he'll have a parameter referencing this ID for this sight box. And when he's created, he will get this sight box from the triggerverse using this ID. And then what he'll do is he will figure out the relative position from his position to the sight box. Based on where I put him in the editor, he'll figure out that relative position, and then after that, every single frame that he's updated, or every time he moves, then the position of the trigger box will be updated with whatever relative position that was, and rotation, relative matrix, sorry, and it'll just work. And I really love this because it just creates one solution for every single NPC. I don't have to double code anything, and I can just chuck it in the editor. Luckily, things do get a bit messy, and luckily Esenthel gives me the option of toggling certain object types. So I can toggle off sight boxes or triggers or whatever. Anyway, I hope you maybe learned something. I'm certainly very excited about where I'm going with this. After these sight boxes, I'm probably going to do a basic turret NPC class, followed by my global alert system, which will really round up the stealth system in this game. Not really round it up, but more finish the real core of it, the real core of the system. Anyway, thanks for listening. See ya.